Mushrooms and toadstools and fungi, oh my! Welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads, and welcome to Book Talk Tuesday, where today's subject is going to be me getting my shit together. No, seriously, mushrooms and toadstools and fungi. Last week, this past week, I read a book that could be called Gothic and or Sporer, which I love, actually. I love it when fungus takes over, not in real life. So I thought today I'd talk about 5 books where mushrooms or fungi play a part, but not necessarily in a horrific way. So I must start. Here's how I found these books. I went on Goodreads and I found a list called Mushrooms and Toadstools and Fungi. And I picked books that I had, except for one, which I bought, I'll tell you about it when I get to it, that were on this list. I picked more than 5, but I'm going to feature 5 today because I don't want to do an hours-long video. So let's start with a childhood favorite, Summer of the Monkeys by Wilson Rawls. Before I get to the back of this, I've read this a lot, but some people complained on Goodreads that they didn't like this book because it was not as good as Where the Red Fern Grows. It can't be. It's a completely different book. It has its own charm and merit, but Where the Red Fern Grows is just in a class of its own. I love this cover. I'm glad I have it. I have a more modern cover that was based on a movie they made, but I prefer this one. J. Barrie Lee loved the river bottoms. Game trails twisted everywhere through jungles of wild cane and beneath tall white sycamores, black gums, and birches. Old Rowdy, his blue-tick hound, was always with him, always in the lead, alert for any danger that might lie in their way. Exploring the bottoms, J. Barrie could pretend he was Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett or Tarzan of the Apes, and he didn't worry about his family being so poor or think much about Daisy, his twin sister. Her right leg had been twisted at birth, and it would take a lot of money for the doctors far off in Oklahoma City to straighten it out. More money than the Lee family had. The only thing on J. Barrie's mind this day was a little game trail he was following deep in the heart of the bottoms. Then he came upon a most extraordinary sight. Rowdy had noticed it first, of course. A monkey, out in the middle of nowhere, staring right at him. This, again, so cute, and on the surface, it doesn't seem like it's going to have anything to do with mushrooms, but there's a fairy ring in here, and if I'm remembering correctly, because I did not reread this, there's a fairy ring is a ring of toadstools that make a circle. And the legend or folklore has it that if you get in the middle of a circle and make a wish, your wish will come true. So that's how mushrooms play a part in this. I was surprised to see this on the list, and I had to think for a minute, and I was like, oh yeah, the fairy ring. Next up is a book that I might have gotten as part of a Nightworm subscription. I've not read this. Yes, it was Nightworms because I've got a book plate in here. I've not read this, but it fits right in with some of the book I read last week and another one I'm going to talk about. It's an unusual thing. A Botanical Garden by Noah Medlock. It is an unusual thing to live in a botanical garden. But Simon and Gregor are an unusual pair of gentlemen. Hidden away from the disapproving tattle of Victorian London, they are free to follow their own interests without interference. For Simon, this means working his taxidermical art. Gregor's business is exotic plants, lucrative but harmless enough. Until his latest acquisition, a strange fungus which shows signs of intellect beyond any plant he's seen, inspires him to attempt a masterwork, true intelligent life from plant matter. Driven by the glory he'll earn from the Royal Horticultural Society for such an achievement, Gregor ignores the flaws in his plan. that intelligence cannot be controlled, that plants cannot be reasoned with, and that the only way his plant beast will flourish is if he uses a recently deceased corpse for the substrate. An extraordinary tale of family, fungus, and more than a dash of bloody revenge from an exciting new voice in queer horror. This came out first edition March 2024. Not sure when I'll get to that. So, I'm not doing really well on my book buying ban with the exceptions of just new releases. Not well at all, but still better than last year, I think. Because when I was looking through the list, I found this book. This was a National Book Award finalist, and I went and bought it at the Barnes & Noble. That book is Tastes Like War by Grace M. Cho. I was captivated by what I read about this book. Grace M. Cho grew up as the daughter of a white American merchant marine and the Korean bar hostess he met abroad. When Grace was 15, her mother experienced the onset of schizophrenia, a condition that first developed in their xenophobic small town and would evolve for the rest of her life. Part memoir, part sociological investigation, Tastes Like War is a hybrid text about a daughter's search through intimate and global history for the roots of her mother's schizophrenia. In her mother's final years, Grace learned to cook dishes from her mother's childhood in order to invite the past into the present and to hold space for her mother's multiple voices. And over these shared meals, Grace discovered not only the things that broke the brilliant, complicated woman who raised her, but also the things that kept her alive. And there are mushrooms on the cover. I'm assuming there are mushrooms in the meals, but I couldn't not get this. I think this is actually going to go up into my... She's about my age. I think this is going to go up into my TBR for January, February. I have a connection to Korea. I served time there in the Army when I was on active duty for 3 years, I think. I really loved it over there. It was my first experience abroad alone as an adult, and I will always think fondly of it. So reading this memoir is it's going up on my TBR for January. Shoot, I might read that next. We'll see. Anywho, next up is a book I have read. And my favorite thing about this author and this book is that this author, I can't remember how I found it out, but for her books, she creates a playlist and puts it on Spotify. And I found the playlist for Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I listened to it while I was reading this book. It's annoying because I don't pay for Spotify, so I get ads, but the playlist was fantastic. I really enjoyed this book, and I recommend it. I think about it, I can still remember the book and what happens mostly in the book, so that's a plus for me because I read so much that a lot of times I just forget it, and if it's not memorable, it's like I never read it. But this one, I remember. So also, now, anytime that I know that there's music or potentially music in a book, I will look up that book on Spotify to see if there's a playlist. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin, Nomi Taboda heads to High Place, a distant house in the Mexican countryside. Nomi is an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, more suited for cocktail parties than amateur sleuthing, but she's also tough, smart, and not afraid. Not of her cousin's New English husband, a stranger who's both menacing and alluring, not of his father, the ancient patriarch who seems fascinated by Nomi, and not even of the house itself, which begins to invade Nomi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. Nomi's only ally in this inhospitable place is the family's youngest son, but he too may be hiding a dark secret. As Nomi begins to unearth stories of violence and madness, she's slowly drawn into a terrifying yet seductive world, a world that may be impossible to escape. I really enjoyed this book. I liked Nomi as a character. At the very beginning, I made a comment that I love the way the banter between her and her father. They seem very alike, or they know each other enough to play off of each other. Also, I like that Nomi embraces her femininity, and so she a lot of times you read, and I saw somebody else comment about this, where, it's not your, I'm not like other girls thing. But Nomi proves that you can be feminine and a hero at the same time. I love this. I have another one of Silvia Moreno Garcia's books, but I have not read it yet. It is more historical fiction. I have another 2 of hers, I think, actually. So I do look forward to reading more, but I don't like to binge authors back to back. I think now it's been enough time I could read it. Otherwise, I get burnt out. Let's see. That was 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, yeah. Book number 5, the final book that I'll be talking about, is another Nightworms subscription. And yes, I have something on the back. I'm trying to find out where all my downstairs books are because I've got a problem. This is The Woodwitch by Stephen Gregory. I've not yet read this. This has got a new introduction by Paul Tremblay from 2014. So this is copyrighted 1988. Andrew Pinkney is a young English solicitor's clerk with boyish good looks and a gentle manner. But he also has a dark side. When his girlfriend, Jennifer, laughs at his impotence, he lashes out in a violent rage, knocking her unconscious. At the suggestion of his employer, Andrew heads to an isolated cottage in the gloomy Welsh countryside to take a break and get a grip on himself. I don't think Andrew is going to get a grip on himself. In the woods, he discovers the grotesque stinkhorn mushroom, whose phallic shape seems to rise in obscene mockery of his own shortcomings. But the stinkhorn, did I say stinkhorn? Stinkhorn gives him an idea, a way to win Jennifer back. I don't think that's going to go well. As the seeds of obsession take root in Andrew's mind, he embarks on a nightmarish quest with unexpected and horrifying results. Ooh, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure when I'll get to this. It will be some time. But it does have, they're calling it a psychological horror. I'm not sure I'm ready for that right now. I'm not in that era. I'm still, especially not in the era to read about men who violently attack women. I'm just not here for that, unless the women rise up and get their retribution. Anywho, that is all for me. This is just a little quick book talk about books about mushrooms. If you have any suggestions about books that contain mushrooms or toadstools or fungi, anything spore, please let me know. Thank you, as always, for sticking with me on my journey, and happy reading.